Well, good evening. This will be the start of the BA 131, the personal finance course. I'll do a bit of an introduction here. We'll talk about the syllabus. We'll talk about, we'll actually get into a lesson. The way this thing's going to work throughout the course is I'll put this video out typically, maybe on the weekend before, or maybe as late as Tuesday into the week. But anyway, there'll be one video posted per week, and the link will be on Blackboard. Also, there'll be a PowerPoint lecture of the same slides that I'm going to run through, and maybe some supplemental materials and stuff. That's about it. It'll make more sense as we go. Let me first talk about the syllabus, because that does kind of define things a little bit. Hopefully it'll pop right up. Yep, here we go. So, we're in the right time, spring, right? Right course number, phone number in case you need to text me or something. Email's probably more efficient. In terms of the book, yeah, I don't like the big book scam, but we got to have something to work with for questions and the rest of that. But if you get an older edition, that's just fine. Don't worry about that. And the way we do assignments and stuff, as soon as you get, or as long as you get it within a few weeks, we're good. You don't need to hand in stuff each week. There will be weekly assignments, but they're handed in as batch assignments. One big document, whether you want to use PDF or Word or even photos of handwritten work, whatever. Somehow it gets submitted into PowerPoint, and that's done before you take the exam. So there's two exams, a midterm and a final. Outcomes, pretty standard stuff, midterm and a final. Personal term project, people hate this, but believe me, it's something you need to do. It is a 4 to 5 page paper. And what people don't like about it is the kind of the wide open nature of it. People want to be told exactly what's going to happen, but nobody's the same, and nobody's situation is the same. For a lot of you, you may be traditional college students, so to come up with this elaborate financial plan based upon some, job that's not necessarily your primary one or not what you aspire to do, doesn't make a lot of sense. So for those types of folks, we'll push it out to your prospective career, what you plan to do, say 5 years out or so. For some of you, you're already engaged in your career and you're going to college kind of maybe on a part-time basis or whatever. You're already making legit kind of money, and you're already should be considering investing and saving and taking care of your finances. So you're at a different stage. And then other people are, they're maybe a little bit more advanced in terms of age, and a lot of decisions they should have made, hopefully they made. But we'll talk a great deal about the time value of money. And this is the kind of thing where you can't necessarily wait. I'll talk a lot about retirement type stuff, but don't get, most of the time when I say retirement, people are thinking, oh, I'm young, that's 40 years away. Well, the deal is that if you generate wealth and you're able to save for retirement, because you want to save for retirement because there's all sorts of advantages between your employer, between the tax system and all that, that's where you want to kind of, earmark or set aside your money as your wealth as you're building it is characterized as retirement, so that it's more advantageous. If you just want to save a big chunk of money, that's great, but you may not have the same tax benefit. Well, you won't have the same tax benefits. And if you were to save money for retirement, I'll show you some ways that you can get access to it now. In terms of, let's say you're buying a house 5 years from now, you can use your retirement savings to help you with that. You can recharacterize things, or you can get super complex and do what I've done and buy property with my retirement, and it's worked out. So anyway, we'll talk more about that as we go. Expectations. Yep, we'll talk more about that paper as we go. It's not something you need to start right now because you may or may not really have the tools to get it completed. It doesn't need to be that hard, believe me, but it's just getting that that first step of your 1,000-mile journey, whatever. It's something you need to think about though, because if you just kind of bumble through life, you're going to end up in a bad situation, especially given the current economy. I mean, so many things we used to take for granted. If you haven't noticed, things are not quite as stable as they used to be. So here's the grading: 30% for the exam, 30% for the final, 15% for the homework. That term project I talked about, that's 15%. Lecture comments. Don't get too wrapped up about that. What will be is there'll be a short video each week, and you'll just make like a sentence or two comment. You don't need a paragraph, nothing like that. Just watch the video, comment on it, and it just kind of gives me kind of since we don't turn in the homework until kind of batch assignments, it at least lets me know that you're live out there. And a lot of times I get whether you be on scholarship or something else, people, external third party kind of people are looking at your progress or whatever, and I just have to say yes, the student's participating or not participating. So it also kind of keeps you engaged. Schedule, yep, actually updated. So proper spring break, we won't have anything that week. You'll take the midterm exam. They used to have an RP Now Proctor thing, but that system's kind of broken, so we're not going to do that. We'll do it straight on Blackboard, as we will the final. For both of these, don't get, again, the tests are pretty comprehensive. Could be quite difficult unless I did a pretty thorough review beforehand. So, you need to pay attention throughout the course, but before the exam, I'll also do sort of a review to hit on the high points to make sure that you're going to do well. And we'll do the same for the final. Bunch of other stuff. There'll probably be some other stuff loaded on here too. People with maybe some sort of need some adaptions or something, some sort of extra mechanisms to get through the course. We can accommodate that as well, but that's probably going to be added. I just saw some emails on that, but they weren't really clear on what was to be expected to be put on the syllabus. So, back to my stuff. So, yeah, I've raised Vizslas, Hungarian Vizslas, great dogs. This is me and my daughter this is in Budapest. This is Buddha, one of my old dogs. I also raise horses. I live at the base of Pioneer Peak. This is actually, I had a bunch of riffraff out on here, and so made it into a campground, and horses being stupid. Great picture of me. I look like a friggin' garden gnome, but anyway, big tractor to move big snow. That's just a friend of mine. Used to fly fighters in the Air Force. This was the first one I was flying. I flew Strike Eagles after that. Still got a Yak, but it's down, not here in the state right now. This is actually, the property I've got. So here's the river down to here. But anyway, I'm not trying to brag here, but I'm just saying there's a lot of business opportunities in terms of tourism and other stuff that can be done. One of my little horses, who's now not so little anymore. Duke campground. Interesting stuff. More Vizslas. I raise some animals out there, and pigs are super productive. Pigs are amazing. Although I'm getting a different style this time. So education-wise, yeah, MBA, PhD. I worked for Booz Allen for a number of years. I did 23 years in the Air Force. So I was primarily, doing that, and then they offered me a job up here. And so I was always trying to get to Alaska and couldn't quite pull it off. I mean, I was in Europe the whole time. I spent probably 14 years in Europe. And anyway, they gave me a Stuttgart job, and then they also offered Alaska, and I jumped on it. So I used to sell real estate. Don't do that anymore. It's, not a bad gig if somebody's going to get into that, but it's not. You don't want to be a part-timer. If you're going to do it, you got to kind of jump in with both feet. And I'm not at a point in my life where I'm willing to give up my life to do that. Did a lot of business type stuff when I was in the military too after I quit flying. We did multi-million dollar contract of selling helicopters down to the Afghanis and stuff like that. And there's all sorts of very, it's great experience in terms of some of the organizations, in terms of some of the business skills that you can put to use, even in military context. Probably, it was just so different and varied. It was a great deal. My new place is Connect River Ranch, but I've got whatever. Maybe we'll go through the website at some point, but I've got a bunch of different ventures depending on what's going on and what's kind of profitable. We're just tapping on the real estate again. This parcel right here was actually owned by my retirement account for quite a while. This one I bought straight out. This one was actually part of a VA loan because I was a veteran, but they only loan on 10 acres. So anyway, there's some real creative things you can do if you know what you're doing and are kind of smart in personal finance. And if you're able to generate a bit of money through the stock market and investments, it can work for you. One of the things we're going to concentrate on tonight, and I'll show you some other slides. I don't know how well this will come through on your YouTube video, so there's also the raw slides that just Excel spreadsheets that will be attached. Maybe they're PDFs, I don't know. Can't remember how I'll attach them, but you'll be able to look at them in detail. And what I'm trying to impress upon you is the time value of money. When I talk about saving now for future investments, if you understand the time value of money, you understand at least 50, maybe 90% of personal finance. The compound interest means that you earn interest on interest. So let's say, for example, somebody's going to give you 10% interest on $100. So you give them $100 and they start making you payments. So at the end of the year, if it's simple interest, it's fairly easy math. You'd get $110, right? Because you just were paid 10% simple interest and it wasn't compounded. If it were compounded, what they would do, the calculation's much more involved, but obviously it's not going to be done by hand. It's going to be all automated. But what they would do, they would divide 10% by 365. And so each day you would get this little fraction. You'd get 1/365th of 10%, right? And so it's going to be a very small number, but it's kind of like Office Space and the little, children's jar that they put money in. It all adds up very, very quickly. Because what happens is on day one you have $100. On day two you have $100 plus that little fractional interest. And by day three you've got, a little bit more fractional interest. And so by towards the end of the year, day 364 or whatever, you're probably earning interest on $110. So it's going to be a little bit more. And because you only had a year's time to work on compound interest, it's going to be more, but not significantly more. But if you multiply that out by years, many years, it's just beyond normal, comprehension. We just can't. Whatever your guess is, I guarantee you're probably going to be wrong. So there's going to be 3 sheets here. One's going to be 5%, which is maybe typical of what you're getting right now, although, God, it's been brutal. And here's one at 8%, and then here's one at 10%. And 10% was kind of the number that, for the majority of my career, that's what I always earned, because that's what the stock market's given. You don't get that in a savings account. Those things don't even keep up with inflation. We'll talk more about that then. But anyway, what these charts illustrate, and the point I'm trying to impress upon you, is if you look at these numbers, and you can go through the numbers, you look at the caveats and all this stuff, and it's set up for somebody. In this case, it was developed for like a military guy, so somebody who starts right out of the gate at earning at 18, or at your 18th year, 18 years old, and in this situation, the person puts away $5,500 a year until age 50. So that's about $500 a month, and maybe you take December off for Christmas or whatever, and then maybe you put in a little bit more from age 50 until age 65. Now, again, this kind of doubling up to catch up, it's really not even that significant. The adding more money in when you're older, 50 to 65, that's only 15 years, and in terms of compound interest, doesn't have that great of effect. Anyway, investment column is your age at 65. So how much money you're going to have at 65? ROI, that's return on investment, right? Cost of delay. If you wait, if you say, well, I got a bunch of student loans, I got all this other stuff, I just graduated from college and I want some stupid car or a brand new truck, and, I think I've earned it. Well, I mean, you can do all that, but there's going to be a cost to be paid, and all that stuff is called opportunity cost. We'll talk more about opportunity cost later, but if you delay, it's going to be painful because this money that's put in at age 18 is going to grow significantly. The money you put in at age 50 is going to grow, but not as much. This stuff at 18 is going to be huge. So these numbers, as you run across, this is where I was telling you that I think most honest people would say, yeah, I knew it was going to be a lot, but I didn't realize it was going to be that much. So keep in mind, this person is putting in $5,500 a year and then $6,500 per year. How much do you think that's going to be at age 65? So the total amount that person's going to put in, if you add up all those 5,500s, all at 6,500, the principal, the money you started out with is going to be this 273, right? How much is it going to be at age 65? Yeah, there's no zeros in here. This is all millions. $5.3 million from $273,000. I mean, it's so that return on investment ends up being damn near 2,000%. So it's amazing if you can pull it off. Now, let's say, well, I bought all this other stuff. I'm, finally thinking about saving. I guess I'm getting older. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do it now. Well, now you're getting by on less than $1 million. So you waited till age 37, and you're going to be not even 850,000, which you're probably not going to be able to retire. You're probably going to have to keep working or, draw from other sources or maybe have other things going on. If you started early enough, this guy, even in this, average college student, let's say you really start, saving at age 24, $3 million. A person can get by on that. You put $3 million in the bank, even in in the future, and you're going to be able to live off the interest and live off your investments and do just fine. So, it's kind of pay me now, pay me later. Do you want to enjoy everything up front or later? So anyway, those charts will be attached. So here's a blow up again. I guess I should have jumped forward for you, but for those of you who couldn't see it, 5.3 million. It's impressive. Okay, so we're going to jump right into the chapters and start talking about that. This thing will probably go just about an hour. That's typically what these lectures run. Definition, so it's all about planning, financial goals, and opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is what we hit. So the video tonight, I think the one I'll add is this guy. He's kind of funny. He's an older gentleman, and he waves his hands around a lot, and he's selling some book about the richest man in Babylon. But anyway, he does a great thing about paying yourself first, and it's related to opportunity cost. A lot of people who don't think it through will say, well, I'm going to pay all my bills, and kind of live life through the month, and then anything that's left over, I'm going to, put aside for my retirement. Well, what typically happens is, well, it doesn't happen. All of a sudden your needs kind of expand, and you have all these other expenses, and at the end of the month, you've got no money to save. In fact, maybe you're, even having to borrow money just to get by with all your new bills that you've sort of generated. And the concept of paying yourself first means that, let's say you have, rent and utilities, and you're doing a budget, and you've got all these bills that show up, and you maybe do it monthly, and you pay all these bills. Well, if you think about it, investments and your retirement should be just like one of those bills, and it's super easy to do, especially if you have it deducted from your paycheck, or you have it, automated through one of the mutual fund companies or something like that, and it's just deducted. So it's money you really don't see, and it's money that's allocated without any effort, and it doesn't get, spent on other stuff. And then, at the end of the month, if you still end up with extra money, giddy up, you've done well, and maybe you want to invest that in something else. And maybe, since you've got your investments taken care of, you can maybe put money in speculation type stuff. Speculation differs from investments. Things like Bitcoin may be an investment at this point. I've got a few well, no, I guess I only got one Bitcoin now, but I got a bunch of other crypto stuff. The Bitcoin might have transcended. Maybe Ethereum might be considered an investment, but the other stuff we're not fooling anybody. That's speculation. That's, it's better than going to the track or, giving it to a bookie or something, but you're definitely, it's a get rich quick kind of thing. So fair enough. Opportunity cost, though, is where I started here. An opportunity cost means, let's say you're addicted to whatever, whether it be, coffee at Starbucks or Pilates or whoever, and, or whatever your vices are. And not to say coffee's that bad a vice, but if you do the math, and if you, go by someplace and get a, basically a warm milkshake every day and pay $5 for it, at the end of the month, that's, $150. Not a huge amount of money, but it's $150 that's not available for investing or anything else. It's just like your time, If you do one thing, you can't do the other. Time and money are your, assets resources you're trying to manage. And anyway, so I'm not down on, having a nice car, although I have no desire for new cars. I've got a bunch of old stuff and a bunch of, work trucks and things like that, but I haven't bought a new car in a long time, and I think I'm better for it. So, I mean, just for peace of mind, especially when it's winter and I don't feel like warming it up properly or treating it right. Don't have to worry about cleaning it. Anyway, I just find it easier in life. So we hit on opportunity costs. We'll beat up opportunity costs throughout the rest of the course as well. How you benefit from understanding personal finance. Yep. Every decision has an opportunity cost. Informed decisions, many career opportunities. Especially, if you're there are commission salespeople, but for somebody who understands it and can consult and not be on a commission, there's not very many of those people out there. And, they would be the people that I'd be after, because they can offer you, fiduciary type advice that's not biased or based upon them getting out a bigger commission. So anyway, next one, budgeting, tax planning. So it's not, it's important not only to earn money, but to keep it is huge. Liquidity has to do with tax flow or cash flow. The way you can be somebody who maybe has a ton of property, but you're roped into your mortgage and your taxes and all these other payment type things, and you don't have the cash flow to support it. That's where a lot of businesses fail. Is where a lot of people end up in trouble, because they don't have the liquidity. They don't have perhaps like a emergency fund set aside to draw upon. They can't get access to cash. But liquidity has to do with not only what assets you have, but how quickly they can be turned into cash. Financing large purchases, protecting your assets, so insurance we'll talk about, investing your money, planning retirement estates. So planning retirement in estate, again, is we'll spend a great deal of time on that, but keep in mind that money can be used for other purposes, before you hit retirement age. So, your finances, and the reason I kind of enjoy teaching this course is because I think it's pretty useful. You're gonna be faced with all these decisions, and if you think about it early in life and come up with a strategy that works for you, you can enjoy a lot more of your life. If you think, oh, I don't want to get involved in that, I'm not greedy, I'm not whatever. Well, guess what? You're going to be obsessed with money because you're going to be poor. You're going to be living from paycheck to paycheck, and you're going to end up in the exact opposite position you want to be. You're going to have to focus all your time and energy and relationships and everything else is going to be focused around how to get by. Whereas if you have a bit of a cushion, hopefully you'll be able to do well. And estate planning, that's for after you're gone. So maybe you'll be able to do well for other people. Budget planning. Yep. We'll look at some. There's a lot more apps and things like that. To be honest with you, I don't do that much budgeting. I try to review where my money goes, but and I keep track of it on the way out. But I mean, you really need to review all your financial statements and all the rest of that because of the aspects of fraud. So, and now with more modern systems, you can get identification of where the money went. I tend not to use that much cash. I tend to use mainly credit cards, but I try to keep them paid off in full so that you're a convenience user. And learning to use credit rather than have it use you is a whole different thing. So to get back to those examples about that compound interest and how fantastic it is to make you money, keep in mind if you owe people money, that compound interest, you can look and see how much you paid to other folks, for using the money because you did. And so, you want to be an interest earner, not an interest payer. So anyway, assets are what you own, liabilities what you owe. So, and this does get down there, you subtract those two from each other. And hopefully it's a positive number. Sometimes it's not, which is fine as well if it's in a good investment. If it's real estate, I don't have a problem having perhaps owing more money than if you just bought a big home. Let's say you buy $1 million home, but you just put a 10% down payment on it or something. Well, when it looks at assets and liabilities, your assets are not $1 million. Your assets is the asset is your equity, which is that $100,000 that was the down payment. Your liability is that $900,000. But in that case, you're using leverage. Leverage means using borrowed money in an investment, and sometimes it's wise, sometimes it's not. Real estate, it's generally just the way it's done. Stock market, we get into speculation. Bitcoin and what do you call it? Crypto, that's definitely speculation. I've never done that. So, in terms of using borrowed money, leveraged margins, things like that. Yeah, different people, different characteristics. And sometimes they get married, which makes it a big friggin' mess if they're, on other sides. Liquidity, we talked about that. It's mainly cash. Money management. Yeah, how to take care of those current needs, liquid form, short-term investments. And whenever we talk about short-term and personal finance, and whenever the IRS talks about short-term and just things in general, think short-term as being less than a year, long-term being more than a year. And that'll be the definition that's pretty much universal throughout your life in terms of finances and certainly throughout this course. Credit management, how to use credit. Again, these guys who say, "Oh, I'm strictly cash and I own my house outright," and more power to you. I got a couple mortgages that are less than 3%, and there is no way I'm paying them off. I'm renting money for not much, and if I have extra money rather than pay off those mortgages, I am not. I'm putting in a real investment and keeping that 3%, 2.75, whatever money for as long as I can. So There are, I mean, but you have to be able to manage your credit. If you can't do that, if you're somebody who just, racks up your credit card until it's, you hit the limit, you got to work on that. Because it's going to make it tough to get through life. And it's going to make it very tough. If you don't have the ability to use credit cards, I don't know how you're going to get through things, because you're going to get stepped on every step of the way, especially when you're traveling. If you don't have a credit card to rent a car, if you don't have a credit card to go to a hotel, you're going to have to carry exorbitant amount of cash, and you're not going to get the better rate because you're not going to be able to do it ahead of time. So anyway, you have to figure that out somehow, some way. Money management, and credit management. They're related, but yeah, having that credit card or having access with a good credit score is quite useful. And it will definitely allow you to save money. If you're running for credit cards and you're paying a tremendous amount of interest, well, then you're going to be paying tons of money. Yep, sometimes you need to do it. Tuition, homes. How much can you afford to borrow? The lenders a lot of times are not your friend. They will let you get in way over your head, and now you're stuck with it. But we'll talk more about loans as we go through it. Getting a competitive interest rate can be challenging, but you have to have good credit. If you're somebody who's going to a payday loan kind of thing or something like that, yeah, you're not getting a competitive interest rate. You're going to get gouged. But for a lot of things, it's the way it's done, and it's actually the better price. A lot of times, if you have access to credit. Plus, you don't have to keep as much cash around. You can keep your money invested if you have access to credit to perhaps cover some of those unplanned items. Holding on to it, insurance planning, all sorts of options in automobile insurance. We'll talk about liability, and then we'll talk about the liability. That's you harming somebody else's property. There's usually legal requirements where you have to have that, or homeowner type stuff where you don't want to get sued and your whole home taken from you. But then there's also the more optional things where collision, for example, or setting your deductibles. Health insurance, we'll try to cover that, but by design, health insurance it's kind of a misnomer. It's not really insurance, and it's a mess right now, more or less on purpose. Both political parties have got their hands in this, and they like the mess because it gives them election issues, and it's super profitable for all the companies involved, and people suffer because of it. Disability and life insurance, we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk a fair amount about life insurance. Disability is, it's again kind of confusing and can be quite expensive, but perhaps through your work or something like that, there's a cheaper policy. It's one of those things that you have to make a decision fairly early in life, because if you wait till you're disabled, then it's kind of too late. So plan for investing. Any funds. So this is kind of driving you to what's done at the end of the month, that extra money, where you should sort of allocate money from the get-go. High return. When you're young, you can, enjoy a certain amount of risk with the understanding that you've got more time for things to sort of stabilize. As you get older, people tend to become more conservative with their money because they have less time to make the money back, and they're not earning maybe at that point, and so they can't make money. But when you're young, some of the more exciting, when we had the great stock market run a few years back, but right now I think I'd be holding. I'm not jumping in anything new right now because I'm expecting to go further down, which I think is pretty common. Bonds, for example, you would have lost 25% this year. Stocks, if you had Tesla, real estate's always going to be more stable. Mutual funds, what mutual funds are is they are funds that are comprised typically of stocks, but it's a bunch of varied stocks. say in a sector or however they want to do it. We'll spend a whole week on mutual funds, but um, probably not quite as volatile as stocks since you're not holding a single stock. You've got a range of stocks. But if you had a tech mutual fund, yeah, you got clobbered, just like everybody else. Risk, uncertainty surrounding the potential event. But guess what? Risk and reward, they're directly related. Hopefully. I mean, if you've got something that's quite risky with no reward, that's not a good deal. But if you've got something that's has no risk and has a huge reward, then you're doing business with Bankman-Fried or Bernie Madoff or one of these pyramid schemes, because that's not realistic. That doesn't happen. If you're making 20% with no risk at all, you're not. Something's wrong, and you'll figure it out. Hopefully sooner rather than later. Manage investments to keep risk at a tolerable level. So, the one certainty is there's two extremes. You can go with complete speculation and get rich quick thing, or you can just hold it all in cash. Well, inflation is a constant. Well, it's not a constant. I mean, it's going to be to some degree, but the numbers right now, when you're dealing with 7-8% inflation, it's brutal. And that's the challenge right now. I mean, I guess I'd be most comfortable in real estate, but stocks and bonds, I think it's hopefully going to turn within a year. I've never been a big fan of bonds. We'll talk about those. A stock represents an ownership position in a corporation, right? You own a little chunk of that corporation, a share in that corporation. A bond, sometimes these can be from government agencies, or sometimes they can be also from corporations. And a bond just represents a loan. You give them 20 grand and they give you back $100 a month. You don't own any part of that company. You've just made a loan. At the end of say it's a 20-year maturity bond, they give you 20 grand back, and you had all your little dividends and you're happy. But stocks are, I like stocks better. But we'll look at the differences and all that. But to tell you the truth, I don't like anything right now. The economy definitely needs to turn around. Manage investments to keep risk tolerable. So let's say you keep it in cash, you experience what you think is no risk. Yeah, no, you experience quite a bit of risk. You are experiencing certainty that your money, the buying power of that money, is going to be decreased by the rate of inflation. So let's say you have $100 and you tuck it away. You don't want to invest in anything, and the interest rates are what they are right now, say 8% or so. Next year you'll still have your $100, but good luck buying anything with it. If it's 8% inflation, if that number's even right, you'd only be able to buy $92 worth of stuff. Yeah, that's the buying power's been eroded, and that's just going to keep happening over and over again. And some of the savings accounts that are paying 0.0 whatever when inflation is 8%, they're not much better than tucking away in a mattress. So anyway, plan for retirement. Yeah, how much money should be set aside? And there's all sorts of ways to figure this out. It's not as daunting as it sounds. We'll look at some of the mutual fund sites. Oftentimes there you'll find good retirement planning type devices that will help you come up with a WAG rather than me just saying, 5.3 million sounds great. Less than $1 million doesn't sound good. So anyway, it can be a little bit more scientific than that, and some of these calculators will help you with that. Estate planning, that has to do with you're gone. You won in terms of, you're still dead, but good luck. We're all going to be dead at some point. But you had enough money. Your money outlived you. What you don't want to have happen is you're having your best life. You're hitting 85, and then all of a sudden you realize you're out of money and you're down to maybe Social Security, and you realize this next several years, your final years, are going to be quite diminished by your lack of money. Hopefully you'll be on the other side of that, where you always have money kind of set aside. You're hoping to live to 90 or something. You make it to 85, and so you got some extra money left, and now you're able to do something with it. Not you, but maybe you're able to do the estate planning so you can determine where it's going to go. And sometimes there's ways to get it, yeah, to those people before you even departed. Get a little goodwill, a little thank you before you're gone. Pardon me. Alrighty. So, building your financial plan. Yep, Nelton Worth. Build your wealth. And it's not about greed. It's about kind of peace of mind. It's about being able to not have to worry, you know, when you have some sucky job or some soul crushing whatever, you know, and you don't want to be job locked. You don't want to be the guy that would love to quit, love to move to someplace else, take advantage of some other opportunity, but you can't because you're not good with money and you're broke and you've got bills where you're stuck. You want, you know, perhaps a little bit of, you know, FU money where you can kind of look for a better situation if things are not good. Inflows, outflows. So yeah, there's kind of a science to it, but the more comfortable you are with it, and even if you're not the kind of person who wants to jump in and be in the middle of it, hopefully, maybe at least through this course, you'll get a little bit of knowledge so that when you are getting advice, you'll at least be able to realize whether you're getting ripped off or not. And I always did my taxes for years until I came across this woman who was recommended to me, and she got me a whopping refund by doing, you know, all sorts of other things, and having a few businesses helps. I mean, I'm actually a S corporation, and I've got a holding company and all this other. I mean, it's cosmic stuff, and the only way you learn that knowledge is by being immersed in it 24/7, which I don't necessarily want to do. I mean, I want to be cognizant of it, but that's not my passion in life, is to be doing other people's taxes. But that's what this lady does. She worked for the IRS for years, and then she went to law school, and unfortunately she passed away a couple years ago. But while she was still going, she did amazing work. And anyway, she kind of set me up to where I've continued to look for people like her. How financial decision affects your cash flow. So again, cash flow tied to liquidity, money coming in, coming out. You know, liquidity deals with cash excesses or shortages. Yeah, it's just liquidity and cash are almost synonymous. You don't want too much money. I mean, that's why I was talking about perhaps having a credit card with a balance that's available, not that's maxed out, but if you have a balance that's available, then in terms of your emergency fund, whatever amount you determine you should have in there, maybe you can have a little bit less, knowing that part of your, if your car breaks or whatever happens, a couple, $3,000, $5,000, $6,000, you can put it onto a credit card and then have that money, rather than sitting there idle, have it in investments, and maybe you sell some of those investments to pay off that credit card, but you do so more in a controlled manner rather than just a bomb burst kind of thing. If you left the money just idly sitting in a savings account earning very little interest, that's not a good strategy because of what we talked about with inflation. So perhaps keeping that money invested, and granted it'll take a little bit more time to convert those investments back into cash, but you put it on the credit card, which gives you a month to figure that out. All right. So budgeting. Yep. How much you spend, your inflows and outflows. So again, when you're doing this, when you're looking at your budget, some of you may be at a certain point in your, where you're in your education where you're, oh, this is really what I want to do, and then you figure out, ooh, that job doesn't pay as much. Or maybe you want to do that job that you're passionate about, it doesn't pay that much, and you need to employ a more aggressive strategy. There's some books out there, I can't remember, the one about the barber. The guy's just a barber. I mean, not a bad job, but not necessarily killing it in terms of money. But he was a part-time barber, but a full-time investment person, and made his money, by being smart with it. So you can do that. The Wealthy Barber, I think, was the name of it. Anyway, how plans affect your cash flows. Yep. Leasing a car, probably not. It doesn't work for most people. Borrow money to purchase a car. Good news is cars actually seem to be leveling off. At least used cars. It's not as hot as it was there for a while. Should you borrow money to purchase a home? Almost always. How much will you need to borrow? First, you have to see what they'll let you borrow. You go in and you get pre-qualified, and we'll talk about that. How long a period? Depends on the rates. Depends on that and where to borrow the money from. So, the good thing about, like, let's say when we're in a market, or pretty much any market where there's some inflation, let's say you want to buy a $500,000 home, but you can't swing that right now, so you can buy this $250,000 home, and inflation is still not your friend, because most people will move in that. You don't have a good option here. Keeping it all in cash is not a good option. But let's say you buy the $250,000 home, and the price, the value of that home doubles. That home is now worth $500,000, and so now you can finally buy that that $500,000 home is now worth $1 million. You were only $250,000 behind to start, and now you're $500,000 behind. So inflation makes things much, much tougher, and we just came out of a period, coulda, shoulda, woulda. Back in the day, inflation was low for quite a while. That ship has sailed. We'll see. Something will come back. Protecting your wealth, so insurance. Yeah. We'll talk in great deal. There's different strategies with life insurance, and I'll tell you, not a controversial, but a whatever. Anybody who makes a commission selling full life insurance will definitely disagree with what I'm saying. But spoiler alert is that term life insurance is typically what you need. It's great value, tons of protection, and but it only lasts for the period that you're making the payments. And we'll talk in more detail about that later. Personal investing. We'll look at options as we go. I find most students are pretty risk averse. I mean, there's going to be a few people that are maybe into crypto, but by and large, a lot of people are so nervous about, and maybe that's warranted, but within a year or two, things have got to turn around. Let's hope. How much should you invest? And we'll look at some of those calculations. What types of investments? We'll look at those options. Yep, everything is integrated. So just because you're saving for retirement, I've financed many a business by borrowing against my 401ks. It's an amazing way to get money. And it's essentially a loan that you pay back to yourself, and you pay the interest to yourself. So most people don't do that. I've always had outstanding loans on my 401ks, just as a way to tap into that financial, that retirement asset I had set up, rather than sit there and just look at the statement. I wanted to use the money now to potentially make more money. Where to get money? Yep. Attempting to work more hours. There's some short-sighted things, but hopefully you'll have more of a strategy and not have to rely on that. Uses of cash. Quite easy to list off all kinds of uses. Everything's integrated. Yep. So it really does have a lot to do with psychology. Different people are made up different ways, and sometimes you'll learn some lessons. Hopefully, you'll be able to learn lessons from other people, or maybe get some guidance and not have to learn the painful lessons. Um, and this is a blend. You there's easy ways to enjoy. It's just if you just stay away from a few key bad decisions, you can have pretty good wealth without sacrificing everything. We'll talk about some of this stuff. Sometimes it makes sense to rent. Well, that's pay rent for a single apartment. Yeah, I lived like a college student when I was in college, and it didn't really hurt me. But again, I didn't want to work. Didn't have to work much, but it was a different time. Tuition wasn't much, and you know, we'd have jobs, but not they weren't the focus. I was a student that wasn't a working that hard. Do you spend all your income that's not needed? Yep. Do you find a reason to spend all your income? Anyway, if you do the pay yourself first method, you allocate, let's say, 10% of your paycheck. Yeah, go ahead. Have fun with the rest of that money, because the bills are paid, your investments are taken care of, and now you can truly enjoy that money. So you don't have to feel guilty about that. You might want to consider upping your percentage, if you continue to have tons of disposable money at the end of the month. But if you're able to live within your means, and still save for retirement, well, good on you. So a little bit of homework. Like I say, not turn in on individual assignments, rather turn as one big thing. The spreadsheets will be there. We kind of talked about these numbers, although we didn't start out at age 24. So look at that, see how that works. I'll post the rest of the stuff on here. I'll put that video up there of the guy, and whatever. He's a nice enough guy. He's just got some distracting hand gestures, but the comments about paying yourself first are pretty valuable. And we'll see you again next week.